podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
How you doing, Ed?
I'm very good, thank you. Yes. Moyes finally got a win at Old Trafford. How many times did he try? Quite a lot.
Quite a lot, but he didn't have the advantage of having, the referees in his back pocket, as we all know we all do at Old Trafford.
No, right, and he certainly didn't have anyone with the talents of Ashley Young, did he, when he was at Everton?
No, 10 from all the judges for Ashley, except for the referee, of course, who gave him a yellow card. We'll come on to that, no doubt. The biggest Manchester United-related news of the international break, I thought, was the sterling performance of Danny Welbeck against not particularly impressive opposition, but two very nice goals from Danny. But he's come back with fluid on his knee, which I don't like the sound of.
Never good having fluid on the knee. I'm not sure what kind of fluid, but fluid's not good, especially on your knee.
Yeah, if fluid where it's not supposed to be in the body, no good.
You want to get that fluid out.
No Rooney for England because of the cut on his head and he wasn't ready to wear that rugby player style headgear. And England were absolutely abysmal against Ukraine, including a complete inability to retain the ball. And Hodgson still didn't bring on Michael Carrick, which seemed to be a bizarre decision.
Yes, well, Hodgson's allergic to passing the ball, isn't he? As we know, as he admitted afterwards, that England's tactic in Kiev was basically to hit the ball long, and he was unapologetic for it.
Yeah, well, he should apologise because I had to watch that. I suppose I could have done something else, but I ended up watching it. What point during a football match is it acceptable to just turn it off and go and do something else? Because you always think, well, it might just be just about to liven up, don't you?
I suppose you do. Since I was on a plane back from Oslo, I didn't need to worry about that particular game. I did catch about 20 minutes of Norway versus Switzerland, and that wasn't very good, if that's any compensation for you.
So lots of United players involved all around the world, of course, including Shinji Kagawa with apparently some pretty excellent performances for Japan.
Yes, it's good that he's saving it for Japan, and I presume United reserves, because he's not getting anywhere near the first team at the moment.
But he had the flu, and that's why he wasn't involved, honest.
Yeah, it's like Wayne Rooney's shoulder injury, isn't it? It's mysterious injuries. He was far too tired, then he was unfit, and then he had some other kind of knack, and then he came down with the bubonic plague or whatever it was. So, well, we'll see about that one. I wonder whether Moyes hasn't just caught Shinji-itis.
Oh, that would be such a shame. I'm feeling quite pro David Moyes today because, not because of the victory against Crystal Palace, but because of a couple of key decisions that Moyes made in that game, which I found extremely pleasing. The starting lineup was a bit of a shock to all concerned, I think. I believe I predicted 7 out of the 11 correct, which is a record low in the Moyes era. Really surprising to see Anderson starting. Less surprising, but still a little surprising to see Young and Valencia on either flanks. What did you make of the starting lineup, Ed?
Yes, well, it looked like a David Moyes side. It was straight up 4-4-2, really, wasn't it? But I guess surprised because he changed up the personnel a little bit, and certainly surprised that Wayne Rooney was back, given that he was far too ill to play for England just 3 days beforehand. So pleasantly surprised, I suppose, in terms of it was an attacking side that Moyes put out. Definitely a surprise that Anderson got a game because he hasn't got anywhere near the team so far, and probably shouldn't get anywhere near the team again after what was a pretty limp display in central midfield. And then, of course, I guess the decision that you're most happy about is that we saw Adnan Januzaj and I guess a little less excitement about Marouanne Fellaini. It's always nice to see a kid come up from the academy side, and didn't he do well?
The only thing I know for sure about how you pronounce his name is it's not a hard J. So it's definitely not Januzaj. Whether it's Januzaj or Januzaj, I don't know. I really want somebody to tell me so I can pronounce it correctly from now until the rest of time, because I think we're going to be talking about him a lot. Lit the place up. We should delay this and talk about the game in some kind of chronological order, but I don't want to. I just want to talk about how I mean, I was very excited to see Fellaini, and actually he made United better. And there is no doubt that Fellaini and Carrick is a central midfield partnership I would infinitely rather see than any of the other possibilities that existed before Fellaini came in. So his passing was phenomenal. I don't believe he gave the ball away once. You know, he kept it simple for the most part. There's a couple of really good movements. He broke up their play a couple of times as well. I mean, I know it's against 10-man Crystal Palace, but actually I was genuinely heartened to see him come on and then to see the impact he made. But yeah, Januzaj, that was something incredibly special. And many people have referenced the Ronaldo debut against Bolton, and perhaps it wasn't quite that level of peak of excitement, but in some ways it's more exciting because he does come he's a United boy through and through, and just the fact that he looked completely, I know it's only 10-man Palace, so it's not, peak of European competition by any stretch of the imagination, but he looked completely comfortable in the shirt, Ed. He kept running, looking for the ball.
Yes, and I suppose the surprise there is that that's a little unlike this Moyes side, isn't it? No, I'm being mean, but look, Fellaini did very well. Pretty understated performance, I thought, which I guess you'd expect on debut. He didn't go herring around. He actually pulled out of a couple of tackles, which was a surprise, and he didn't elbow or kick anyone, which was a bonus.
Yay!
Slotted in right in central midfield, so at least United weren't tempted to launch it long, which is, I suppose, the fear. And look, he's got a certain sense of gravitas that Anderson and Cleverley don't have, right? So immediately gave United a bit more oomph in central midfield, and I'm sure he'll be a good player there. What it did do, of course, is make United a little more functional and a little one-dimensional because the ball went out wide all the time. And it was lucky that, of course, when it went out wide all the time, there was Januzaj there to break things up a little bit, because he certainly didn't play like any normal winger, did he? He wasn't hitting the touchline and getting into crossing positions, as Moyes put it afterwards, and I think that quote tells you something about how Moyes might want to play. But I think the excitement afterwards is all about Januzaj, who it wasn't Cristiano Ronaldo-esque as a debut in the league, competitive debut for United, but it was certainly very exciting, and he's got a lovely balance. He looked for the ball all the time, looks extremely confident on the ball, a lovely pirouette at one stage with the ball to beat two men. So he's got everything in terms of his technique. Of course, he needs to fill out and be able to compete at this level, and needs to provide a bit more of a goal threat. His couple of shots were a bit wayward, but it looks good, doesn't it? Shame his contract runs out next summer, though.
Yeah, it won't do. They're going to sign him up. I'm confident of that, and I think not super enthused by the concept of the Moyes era, but had a question from @BMcWall on Twitter asking about the differences between the Moyes era so far and Ferguson, and I think some of them have been bad. I think that Chelsea game, the last 10 minutes, that Chelsea game would have looked different under Fergie. But actually, Moyes' substitutions were extremely timely again in that Palace game. Like he didn't wait as long as Fergie does for subs. And it's absolutely lovely to see him chucking an 18-year-old kid on. Because it's not like we were 4-5-0 up in that game, right? Januzaj came on with a vital role to play.
Yeah, he certainly did. I mean, and afterwards, actually, Moyes said that if the start to the season hadn't been quite so difficult, he might have been tempted to play him right from the start of the season, and he was very tempted to play him from the start of the game. I mean, frankly, given Ashley Young's mediocrity, that's a black mark against Moyes for not doing it. But yeah, look, I think that's really bold, and I think that's great because, honestly, I see Moyes as a pretty conservative coach, but if he keeps making decisions like that to throw young kids in that he believes have got the talent to do it, then I'm quite happy to change my opinion there, and I think that was a very bold and a very good decision. He's been rewarded for it. Look, let's not get over ourselves. We haven't suddenly got a world beater here. I mean, he's got a lot to learn, Januzaj, but a very exciting performance. And as Moyes said, he's going to be a top player. Let's just hope it's at United and sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I mean, I have to say, the energy and the balance, I mean, he obviously looks very slight, but no one's been able to knock him off the ball yet in any of the games I've seen him play for United. So he's obviously got, as you said, phenomenal kind of balance and a very wiry sort of strength, but it will be... Obviously, he will develop and fill out, and of course, he's got a long way to go because he's a young kid, but it's just really cool it's just fun, it's just fun to have a young, exciting talent who's not just sort of sitting there while we all kind of look, thinking, come on, give him a chance over some of the squad play. Park Ji-sung's not getting on the pitch ahead of him,
Yes, although Ashley Young got on the pitch ahead of him, but, of course, Ashley Young gets on the pitch ahead of everyone at the moment.
Now, Ashley Young had a perfectly decent game in terms of what he did. It was one of his better games for United, not particularly great, but it was a little better than he has been, and he did quite a lot of effective stuff, and he made us look dangerous. But man, he's such a cheat. He's such a horrible cheat.
There's another word I might be thinking of about him that's got C in the starting position. He's a horrible cheat. He deliberately dived in the penalty area. I mean, it was just a horrible dive and very obvious, and rightly got a booking for it, and Moyes called him out for it afterwards as well. On the penalty, I mean, I think he's legitimate to go down there. He got a pretty large shove in the back. I think that's okay. Clearly, he's felt the touch and managed to stay on his feet long enough to fall into the box rather than outside of it. The best talent he's got, I would say. Look, he can deliver a ball, and he didn't have a terrible game compared to some he's had. But, I just can't help feeling there's a sense of mediocrity about him every time he gets hit. And we've got players that are more talented. Nani is certainly more talented. Kagawa is certainly more talented. Doesn't mean, of course, they don't all play in the same position. But, you'd like to get them in the side ahead of Ashley Young, if possible.
On the dive, the worst thing about the dive was it looked like he was about to do something really special. Because he got the ball and I think he is actually more talented than he's shown at United so far. The best performances he's had at United have been quite impressive on occasion. And I don't think he's brilliant, far from it. I don't think he's whatever United class means. I don't think he's that. But he has got some positive characteristics to his game, and he was on a fantastic run. Like, he beat a man brilliantly and then knocked the ball past the defender, and it looked like, he could have got past the defender, but it almost looked like it didn't even occur to him to try and get round the defender and shoot or pass it to one of his colleagues or whatever. He just had this clever little cunning plan in his head. And the horrible thing about it, because it wasn't a dive, as it was the full-on simulation, where you go in and you try and fake. It's not just like he jumped over a challenge. He literally threw his leg back to generate the contact and then flicked it up to try and make it look like the defender had initiated the contact. It's such a conscious decision to cheat,
Yes, he's a regular simulator. Yeah. That's for sure. And he's been called on it before, and he just can't help himself. Yeah, I thought it was interesting to know how much Fellaini got the ball. I mean, he was on for half an hour or so and made 46 passes, 5 of which were mispassed. So he was out of step a little bit. But not only how much he got the ball, which shows that the players around him trust him already, but they got it in a very narrow area. Didn't touch the ball in either box, and all of his touches were very, very close to the centre of the pitch. So if he's going to play that role, that's interesting, because I don't know whether it fixes that problem that we had, which is the link between midfield and the forwards. So, might need a tactical change there. Of course, we do have a player in the squad who can play that role very, very well. And also, if Rooney's going to play, he's going to have to come a little bit deeper if Fellaini's in the side. That's 2 observations I took out of that Palace game. Yeah, and,
he had the ball a lot more than Michael Carrick did after he came on. But, it's only half an hour's football, isn't it? It's tempting to read too much into that. Michael Carrick, I don't think he had one of his best ever games for United by any stretch of the imagination, but he did one of the coolest things ever. A lovely Zidane turn in the middle of the park from Michael Carrick. Very, very much enjoyed that one. And that nearly led to a goal as well. It was because kind of a little loss of possession for a second, but then the ball goes out to Rooney and he plays an absolute pinger of a pass to Van Persie, who, if only that one had gone in, because you could have started the replay from the Zidane turn and it would have just been one of the all-time great United goals, that would.
Yes, unlike Michael Carrick, that wasn't it? There you go. And in terms of the wider performance, I thought United just a little bit muted and took quite a long time to really seal the game, didn't it? And actually, United created a lot of chances in the game, but a combination of not clear-cut chances and some poor finishing meant that the game was a little more squeaky than it perhaps should have been until that absolutely fantastic Wayne Rooney free kick. I mean, you like them to get in the top corner, don't you? Because that's just, a little bit more spectacular. But the pace and dip that he got on the ball was too good for the keeper.
Congratulations to Wayne Rooney on scoring a goal for Manchester United. I suppose that's better than him scoring them against us or for someone else.
Yeah, so rumours that he put in a transfer request straight afterwards are yet to be founded.
He did not kiss the badge on his chest. He just held out his arms aloft and waited for the adoration to surround him and his funny hat thing that he was wearing. Robin scored, which I think was good, really. I think he sort of needed that, because actually there's a couple of moments where I was a little bit like, You remember that period he had last season where he struggled for a goal for a while and then kind of got a jammy one, and that was it. That was him off to the races again. And I know he obviously scored 2 in the opening game and they were excellent, but he has had a few chances and not taken them. So I think that'll do him a bit of good. And actually there was a long build up to that penalty, and there was a close up of him, and you could see that his breathing was pretty shallow, and he was kind of, his eye looked almost a bit twitchy. You could see he was nervous before that penalty. But he regained his super cool composure and placed it, just sort of tricked the keeper, really. It wasn't a brilliant pen technically, but the combination certainly worked. If the keeper had gone the right way, he would obviously have got to it, but no problem.
Not Van Persie's best penalty, but good enough, and that's all that counts, I suppose. Yeah, I'm not sure he's as sharp as he can be, but it's early in the season, and I'm sure we'll get more. Nice quotes from Van Persie this week. Said he's been having nightmares this summer, worrying about the fact he didn't score enough last season. He only got the 30 goals, so yeah. Very disappointing, Robin, and he said he was especially disappointed about the Champions League failure. So, I mean, I like that kind of thing. He wants to do better and better and better. Be interesting to see whether he gets anywhere near 30 again this season, especially if Rooney is going to stay and play much more, because you'd think that Rooney would get on the score sheet a bit. Maybe they'll share the burden.
I mean, I really enjoyed that game. The first half was a bit staid, but Saturday lunchtime kickoffs, if you look back in history, I don't know, maybe I'm just sort of misremembering it, but in my head, they're always bad. They're always kind of flat and take a while to get going.
I'm not having that. Is that a theory? Saturday lunchtime players can't play?
Yes, that's my theory. That's the...
I couldn't help leaving the game with this sense of ennui about it, and it's a bit the same with the Chelsea and the Liverpool games as well. There's nothing really that exciting yet. I mean, the Adnan cameo was really good, and United were solid enough. Definitely deserving winners. I think there's a lot more to come, and that's an observation that there's plenty of talent in the squad, and there'll be games when they put it all together. I hope. I'm not sure that this was the game. It was just about good enough.
Yeah, and if I just thought that, I don't know, I didn't leave the game with a sense of ennui, I have to say. I was thoroughly enlivened by a bunch of stuff about the second half, and against 10-man Palace at home. So, but I've decided in my own head that the Moyes era, the beginning of it, goodness knows whether success will come eventually. It may well, but the beginning of it is inevitably going to be very difficult, because he's trying to follow Alex Ferguson as a football manager. It's just not fair. Nobody should have to do that. And so I'm just going to look really hard for the things that are fun and enjoyable about it, rather than kind of, it's very easy to see what's not so enjoyable about it. So I'm digging in and finding excitement. And actually, it was dead easy to do because of that Januzaj cameo, because whatever happens from here on out, Ferguson hasn't given 18-year-olds time in the league for a really, really, really long time, right? It's been a long time since we've had that. And actually, I think it's really smart PR from Moyes as well, which has not necessarily been his specialist subject.
No, talking of which, afterwards again failed to deny that United had bid for Gareth Bale. I mean, so last time he said this one, he walked straight into the press conference, and last time he was asked about Gareth Bale and failed to deny that a bid had been put in. He went straight into the press conference and then said, no bid was put in. Clearly he'd been got to by the PR people. I think Moyes, being Moyes, just can't help himself. He has to evade every question, doesn't he? So asked again, because there were rumours in the weekend press that United put in a £125 million bid for Gareth Bale. I presume that was the 5 minutes after Gareth Bale signed the Real Madrid contract.
Presumably so. Talking of people signing contracts at Real Madrid, get your funereal music on. It's all over. The dream is dead. Ronnie's not coming home. Turns out Cristiano Ronaldo is not actually motivated by a deep, unabiding, heartfelt love of Manchester United, which cannot be replicated under any circumstances, and has successfully found it within himself to not only sign a contract, but to say that Manchester United is the past and I want to stay at Real Madrid until the end of my career.
Interesting this, isn't it? Because if the noise is coming out of Old Trafford that the club really did make an effort to sign Ronaldo this summer, it kind of puts all of this in a different perspective, doesn't it? It gives it the perspective that Ronaldo and his people were quite happy for those rumours to keep flying around while negotiations with Real Madrid were ongoing. He used United much as Fabregas did before him.
Yes, absolutely. It's almost like Cristiano doesn't care about us at all. I'm sure he does a bit. I'm sure that it was a very emotional thing for him when he came back to United, but emotional on his own terms, as everything is with a personality like that. And he's a fantastic player, but I, for one, am not mourning him not turning up back at Old Trafford flapping his arms around, because what's the point of being good if you're horrible, I don't mean he's a horrible person, but when you conduct yourself like that, it doesn't really matter how good you are. It's not fun to watch.
Yes, the world's greatest, TM, as The Guardian likes to call him, scored for Real Madrid on his debut and gave it the old heart sign. I didn't notice him kissing the badge, but that can't be far behind. That's the way it is these days. Although, I have to say with Bale, at least he doesn't come with that mega ego. I mean, maybe he'll grow one now that he's being paid a fabulous amount of money. He's playing for Real Madrid and he's surrounded by other players with mega egos. He's a pretty down-to-earth kid, so you can't really hate him just yet.
No, I think he's a sweet lad, isn't he? And as for kissing the badge, I'm guessing that you weren't watching the Sky Sports News coverage on transfer deadline day, Ed, because they showed no less than 379 times Bale not just kissing the badge, but getting into a serious long-term... He would have definitely been thrown out of a swimming pool that had a no petting sign on the wall for what he was doing to that badge. There was some serious lip-to-badge contact happening.
X-rated badge.
Yeah, for sure. Heavy petting.
Lovely.
He's a good lad, isn't he? And I just want to come back to the Fellaini thing for a second. I am genuinely optimistic about his role at United, and it was quite good because, it was getting on for the end of the game. We did need that other goal, but there was no sense of launch it to Fellaini, none whatsoever. And I know it's not 10 minutes to go with when we're losing, but it didn't change that aspect of the way we played at all. And obviously, you could just see the defenders thinking, ruh-roh, whenever there's a set piece.
Yes, I mean, he's certainly going to be a target at set pieces. I mean, he made a real nuisance of himself at the near post for the corners that Robin van Persie was taking on United's right. So the in-swinging corner, Fellaini is going to cause a lot of trouble at that near post, I think. It's a new target for sure, and United hasn't had that. I mean, the team has been set up to play the ball on the deck. There's really no big men in the team aside from Nemanja Vidic. So certainly changes things. I hope that's the only time they look for his head. Interesting, I watched a couple of weekends ago, I watched some youth football, some very, very youth football, under 8s. Just as a commentary on the style of play that players in this country are brought up with. When the goalkeeper had the ball, all of the players crowded into about a third of the pitch in the attacking third of the opposition pitch, and it was launched along every single time. These are under 8s being coached to play long ball football.
Pretty depressing, isn't it?
So I just don't want to see that at United, and I don't think we will. Let's hope not. Anyway, and anyway, look, I think pretty good debut from Fellaini all round. Much bigger test, of course, coming up on Tuesday with United in the Champions League. This is going to be the real test for Fellaini because he's not really played Champions League football before.
At Arnabray21 says, would you stick with 4-4-2 on Tuesday or change it up? So Ed, pretend you're David Moyes. Would you stick with 4-4-2?
So if I'm David Moyes, it's going to be a pretty much close to a 4-4-2. I think Wayne Rooney will play off Robin van Persie and it'll be more like a 4-4-1-1, won't it? The amount of possession United have will dictate how deep Rooney plays. So if United are struggling, he'll come back and fill into midfield, which I presume will be a midfield 2 of Carrick and Fellaini with Rooney trying to make the extra man.
What are your sort of hopes and fears for the Champions League this season then?
Well, the hope is that put in some credible performances. I mean, it would take a very optimistic fan to say United are favourites. I think in reality, Bayern, Real Madrid and Barcelona are quite some distance ahead of United, I think, in terms of the personnel they've got and the quality of football. But of course, many things changed during the season. Barcelona have started off exceptionally well. They're playing some really, really good football, and they've changed it up. So it's not the pure tiki-taka of old. It's it's still very, very good football, but they're prepared to switch it to both sides of the pitch. And Real Madrid, they look decent. I don't think they've got into real top gear at the moment. And Bayern Munich, had very good pre-season, started the campaign well too. So I think they're the three favourites. I watched Paris Saint-Germain at the weekend and they look very, very good too. I looked really casual once they got into the lead, so I wonder whether there's a bunch of mercenaries in there and they need to be whipped into shape by Laurent Blanc. But I think they'll be right up there too, as bags and bags of talent in that side.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually last season they ran Barcelona really close. And the Champions League's interesting, isn't it? Because it's very rare that the best team in Europe wins the Champions League. It happens, once every 4 or 5 years probably, right? It definitely happened last season, didn't it? There's absolutely no question about that. It was one of the most dominant tournament-long displays that's ever happened, I'd say, in the Champions League, certainly in modern times. That and when Barcelona beat us in that final. I'm not just talking about the final, but I mean the whole route to it. Bayern were the best, weren't they? And they've just strengthened and strengthened and strengthened. And obviously, it's also been a time of transition, so there might be some negative consequence to swapping from Heynckes to Guardiola, but they still look pretty rocking. And yeah, we're going to need to get lucky, but I think that's okay. I think so long as all of our expectations are in check, I kind of just hope that Moyes has a decent run at it, and we get through the group okay, gets just some experience, because more than the league, this is where his inexperience is going to be a huge factor. And kind of interesting to see Ferguson in the stands for that game. You wonder if he's going to come to pretty much every home game. I guess he will. And it's not, obviously it's lovely from a health perspective that he's recovered from his hip hop well enough to come. But actually I wonder if this is a time when it is worth Moyes picking up the phone and not worrying too much about I must be my own man sort of thing. Because I think he's doing a pretty good job of that, right, so far, the being my own man bit.
Recovered from his hip hop, I thought you said. Hip hop, hibbity hop. Fergie was sat in the director's box against Crystal Palace. The cameras, naturally turning to him. No goals against United for them to go in on a close Fergie-looking angry pose. I'm sure that will come. I'd be surprised if he goes to every game, because that will be creating the shadow, won't it? Especially if United are having a difficult time at some point this season. But yes, apparently recovered. And as for Moyes being his own man, I think he's very clearly his own man. I think making decisions like bringing Januzaj into the team, or at least close to the team, and making a very big purchase in Fellaini will help him make it his own team and be his own man even more.
He comes free govern, his chips are in the oven, Man United he's loving. He likes to say well done, and no question about that. I think his experience at this point is outweigh, the benefits of his experience when it comes to the Champions League outweighs the negative consequence. They're naming Water's Edge, Water's Reach, that they're renaming Sir Alex Ferguson Way. So now you have to walk up the Sir Alex Ferguson Way to get to the Sir Alex Ferguson stand, past the Alex Ferguson statue, and then see Alex Ferguson, and then manage Man United. It's not an easy ask, is it?
Yeah, I'm not sure we'll ever see a David Moyes stand, but hey, maybe.
You never know,
maybe.
Right? You never know.
You never know. The actual game on Tuesday, because we have 2 games to preview this week, because we're putting the pod out early against Leverkusen, who beat Wolfsburg at the weekend, helped by Luis Gustavo, the ex-Bayern Munich player from Wolfsburg, being sent off. He's been sent off twice this season in the Bundesliga. Didn't see so much as a yellow card for most of last season. As soon as you move out of the big club, you start getting the cards, don't you?
Has it been mentioned how much Luis Gustavo looks like Nani? That's a remarkable football looky-likey, as far as I'm concerned.
The man who turned down Arsenal. Of course, another player who didn't turn down Arsenal, is it Ozil, however you say it, had a pretty good performance at the weekend for Sunderland. Just in that position that United seemed to lack at the weekend.
Yeah, I think...
Just putting it out there.
I think you pronounce it Januzaj. The Bayer game will be a really good test for Moyes. Bayer are a decent side. They are not tearing up any trees, though, right? So this is not Bayern Munich by any stretch of the imagination, nor even Dortmund. They're not the top tier of German football, are they?
Top enough tier to be in the Champions League, mind you.
Well, yeah, but, so are Arsenal. So pre-Mesut Ozil, Arsenal.
They've got some decent players. Stefan Kiesling up front he's a very good player. He can certainly cause some damage. They signed a right back called Roberto Hilbert. That's Hilbert, not Hibbert. Before David Moyes gets really excited about this one. No, they're a decent side. I think they'll be a good test for United. United should be too strong.
And it'd be fascinating to see what lineup he picks. I think the chances of Anderson starting in midfield are relatively slim.
Unlike Anderson.
Yes, there we go. I just set him up, you knock him down, right? And yeah, I think Fellaini, Carrick, can't see him starting with Young again, but I also can't not. Giggs hasn't played for a while, has he? Do you think this is unleash the Giggsy?
Maybe, get some energy back in the side. Who knows? Nani's due a game, isn't he? Maybe we'll see Kagawa now his flu has passed.
Talk about due a game, crikey. I mean, I asked for Twitter questions, as I always do. Half of the we had, can Januzaj become our very own Messi? Is Januzaj ready to step up, be a consistent first-team player? Is Januzaj better than David Bellion? These are some of the questions that we've had. We also, of course, had a lot of questions about Shinji Kagawa, #FreeShinji. I'm giving Moyes the benefit of the doubt around Kagawa. I think he's going to find a way to use him and use him effectively later on in the season. But he better hurry up and start doing that soon, because otherwise I'm going to have to, I'll be sad. And this is not about mythologising Kagawa the player and making him out to be, players get better as they play less, like when England were really excited about the return of Gareth Barry in the 2010 World Cup. It's not about mythologising the player, it's about the kind of football that he represents. The fact that he plays really beautiful, intricate, attacking, passing, short passing, open up defences with lovely through balls and stuff. I love that kind of football, and
get what you mean. And of course, when players aren't around or they're injured or they retire, they do become better. Jack Kennedy was the best president the US ever had. He might not have been seen that way if he hadn't had his head blown off. And Shinji Kagawa is the best number 10 United have ever had, and he might not be seen that way if he actually plays, because his performances last season were not world beating, even when he was fit, which wasn't all the time. So look, it's not that you pretend that he's the world-class answer to all of United's problems, but he does, as you say, he does represent a kind of football that I think most fans would like United to play in an exciting, attacking, fluid, creative kind of football, and he's really the one player who can do that in the United side, from that central role, and if he's not even getting on the bench, that kind of gives you this feeling that that's not the kind of football United will be playing this season.
We'll see, because I do think it is incredibly early days, and we're asked about the difference between Ferguson and Moyes, and we've talked about the difference in the number of points that Ferguson gets you by the end of the season, and I think we may genuinely have already seen 2 points that Ferguson would have got that Moyes hasn't been able to get in that Chelsea game, and maybe even that Liverpool game we'd have got something. This is obviously an art rather than a science measuring this, but I think it is really too early to draw any significant conclusions about the long-term plan of Moyes at United. And I think just as United are in transition, presumably Moyes is in transition as well. He knows that, he must know that he can't build a long-term successful legacy at United playing very conservative football, that it just won't do, right? That you have to give something in return for that. Ferguson, we all talk about, a person getting better as they go. Ferguson's the best ever, but people don't talk so much about his failings now that he's not there anymore. But we've talked a lot about our frustrations with Ferguson's conservative streak. But as you said, always a winner, always a gambler. And Moyes is definitely going to have to get a bit more of that about him, and hopefully he'll adapt and start playing a bit more fluid football. And I have to say that's one of the reasons I was so heartened to see Januzaj play, because it was that sort of decision.
We want that exciting football. We don't want to come away with that sense of ennui, do we? Use that word for the third time this pod, especially as the poor lad's on the Red Bulls bench at the moment and doesn't get a game.
Poor old Thierry Henry. So, the Leverkusen game, I think that you're right. I think it will definitely be that version of the 4-4-2. Be interesting to see if he does adapt it, but I don't think he will just yet. And Champions League expectations are relatively moderate. One game that expectations cannot possibly be moderate in, and also one where Moyes can certainly one-up Fergie in terms of past history of conservatism. We are going to the Etihad. Going on our holidays all the way across town, the scene of Sir Alex Ferguson's worst moments in terms of decision-making, the worst decision he ever made as United manager. That's saying something.
Park's not available for this game, is he?
He's not. But what do you think is going to happen at the Etihad on Sunday?
I think United are going to spank him 6 or 7-0, clearly. Maybe not. Look, it's going to be around that to within 6 or 7. It's going to be a very tough game. City have started the season okay, but no more than that. I mean, defeating Cardiff and the draw at Stoke are not exactly what they wanted, and Pellegrini will be wanting some better football as well, not really been playing great football. So, I suppose given that context, it's a chance for United to go there and impose themselves on City and go for a win. Can't really see it. I think first derby for Moyes, he's going to be let's not lose first, and if we nick a win second, for sure, which makes a lot of sense actually. You can't criticise him too much for thinking that way. So I think we'll see a pretty traditional looking lineup from United, reasonably conservative tactics, and they'll try and stretch the game out later in the game and see if the creative players can do something then. But he's going to want to not lose, I think, Moyes.
I think absolutely huge for City is the fact that Kompany is apparently going to be back for that game, and that would seem to be an extremely significant part, because if you look at all the times they played bad, a lot of it comes from the fact that Kompany's not there. That Cardiff game would have looked an awful lot different if Kompany had been in central defence where he normally is, so I'm pretty sure that makes a big difference to City, and they'll obviously be super up for it as well, but hopefully we will too, and I think this is a game where it's lovely to have Fellaini in the side, because we have been bullied by City's midfield quite a lot recently, haven't we? And I don't think Fellaini's as good as Toure, but it will be nicer to have him up against Toure than Tom Cleverley.
Well, yeah, he's got more presence about him for sure, yeah. I mean, I would think United will not be bullied in the same way. And it'll help Michael Carrick, I'm sure, because when he gets pressed, he doesn't have the same kind of game that he'd like to have. Clearly, it happens quite a lot. And I think if United need to get physical in that game, Fellaini will surely help. It's not a bad time to be playing City. They're not playing fantastic football at the moment. Even if Kompany's back, he can't be that fit. So I don't think he'll be at his best either. So there are some factors that are playing into United's favour here. It's not City haven't got 8 players out and United playing fantastic football and we're about to go there and roll them over easily. Could easily lose this game, but I think it'll be really, really tight. I think Moyes will be delighted with a very, very tight game, and United will not give in, I'm sure. I'd be really surprised if we see Januzaj anywhere near the pitch, because it's just not that kind of game, and Moyes has signalled that he won't be playing the young players. Another reason why Giggs might not play on Tuesday and might play in the derby instead.
That's a good point. At Happy Hero says, are we wearing Rooney-style headbands or Fellaini-style wigs?
Neither.
During the recording of this podcast, no. I imagine you're one of those people, Ed, who believes that wigs are comedy afro wigs at the football are up there with all the worst excesses of modern football, right?
Yeah, it's not quite as bad as a handwritten piece of A4 with by XYZ player, but it's not far off.
I'm firmly team live and let live. You want to wear a silly afro wig to the football, you go ahead. You have a good time. You knock yourself out. One of my very good friends is a Man United fan who has an actual afro, and so I think he's a bit nervous about people imagining that he's got a wig on. At Arge United Red says, who's the winner between Fellaini's chest, Vida's head and Robin's chocolate foot? What you've done wrong there is you put Vida's head in a competition, and we all know that whatever the competition is, Vida's head will not lose.
Yes.
No doubt whatsoever about that. I've been pretty pro David Moyes. This is a mean one, though. At Conzor says, did you notice Everton's new style of play? Almost enjoyable until I realised where their old style of play went.
Oh, harsh, but maybe fair. Yeah, Everton gained a very fine victory over Chelsea. It's going to be tight, this Premier League, isn't it? It really is. I mean, I think, I guess we knew that already, but just the early few rounds of the season show that United, City, Chelsea, Arsenal definitely come into it now. They've got an extra spark in their team. We talked about the confidence that'll bring them, even if they're a bit short in other areas. Spurs, of course, and Liverpool have had a fantastic start to the season, so it's going to be super, super tight at the top.
Yeah, it is, except Liverpool's fantastic start is going to peter out into an impressive relegation scrap at some point.
We can only hope, and Arsenal's season will peter away after March as always, and it'll be Chelsea, City and United for the title. And I don't think any one of these sides is going to run away with it. I think there are significant weaknesses in both the City and the Chelsea squads that suggest that neither of them will, and neither of them have started the season really fantastically well either.
No, and actually Chelsea have managed to engineer something of a crisis for themselves impressively by shipping out what I'm pretty confident is their best striker And bringing in Etu, who, I mean, I saw match of the day highlights of their game, so I'm not going to judge his potential for the season on that, and obviously a wonderful player, but he looked in absolute shocking touch. He's not exactly hit the ground running, has he?
He hasn't played a lot of football for the last 2 years. He's spent all his time, according to Roberto Carlos, that is, trying to sign his best mates. Which isn't bad when you're signing for Anzi, who pay you ridiculously offensive amounts of money.
At Welbeck says, how long do you reckon it'll be before an aerial view over Old Trafford is just all black because of Fellaini wigs? I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think there'll be plenty of anti-wig protesters stopping that from happening. At Chuckety Chuck says, is Ronaldo's legacy as a United great now dead? Also go Adnan. Ronaldo's legacy as a United great is exactly what it's always been, which is that he was a fantastic, fantastic player. And for some people, he's a player they care a lot about because he was important to them when they were young. But I can't imagine there are many older United fans who really hold Ronaldo in particularly high esteem, not as a player, of course everyone does as a player, but just as a kind of, United through and through type character.
Well, quite, yeah, and that's fair enough. Look, he scored 100 and something goals in about 300 appearances, just under 300 appearances for United. He's a very, very good player. He's up there with not too many players who've got those kind of numbers, and he was a fantastic player, but he left and didn't want to come back, and he's pledged his future to another team, and so let's just put it in that kind of context. Of course, a player who was a true United great celebrated, or didn't celebrate, unfortunately, his the 50th anniversary of his debut. George Best was 17, and 50 years on from his debut in a 1-0 win against West Bromwich Albion, to the day United were playing at Crystal Palace.
Yeah, and, not to be overly soppy about this, but, nice to see an incredible young United-raised talent making their debut on the left wing in that game. I'm not suggesting Januzaj will necessarily go on to...
Well, of course, he was an Anderlecht-raised talent, but, hey, until 3 years ago when we pinched him, not quite illegally, but, hey.
Well, I think if they've been there since 15, George wasn't there before he was a teenager either, was he? But yeah, George, best nice that, I've been thinking about that a lot because on the Red Mancunian podcast last week, they were talking about best United 11 and it had to be players that you've seen, and Andy Tomo was arguing very vehemently that Brian Robson should be in the side, and he made mention of this chant that, number 1 is Georgie Best, number 2 and number 7 is Brian Robson, and I don't know, I love stuff like that. I'm such a soppy idiot. But the fact that we still sing George Best's name, and most of the people in the ground obviously never saw him live, but when you watch his videos, and he was just something absolutely else, wasn't he?
Just watch George Best's top 10 goals on YouTube. 10 absolute blinders. Yeah, he was. I'm not old enough to have seen him live. Basically, his career was on the very last legs. As I was really getting into football, so I have videos and YouTube, and that's it. But clearly an absolutely brilliant player and an icon. And I just love some of the quotes about George Best as well. The one where the bellhop walks into the hotel room, there's Best lying on a bed with a naked Miss World and a pile of money, and he said, "Where did it all go wrong, George?"
Yeah, and it's obviously very sad that he never managed to conquer his battle with alcoholism. He did have good periods of lucidity though. He had good periods where he was kind of managing to keep himself together, and he managed to build a pretty nice life for himself even amongst all that. But it's sad that the booze got him in the end. And not to get on my soapbox about this stuff, but I work as an alcohol support worker for a job, and on the anniversary of, while we're celebrating the wonderful talents of George Best, genuinely and truthfully, if you think you might have a problem with alcohol, get in touch with someone to get some help, because the younger you get some help, the better it ends up. And there is help out there.
Very true. How life has changed. Your support for alcohol used to be going to the bar and buying several rounds of beer, as I remember.
Yes, or as I don't remember, hence what I do now.
So, it's been a pretty big week for United, hasn't it? And Moyes' first win at home, as Manchester United's manager. Debut for Adnan Januzaj, debut for Marouanne Fellaini. 3 points on the board after, mini wobble after the draw with Chelsea in the loss to Liverpool. Wayne Rooney back and scoring in a United shirt. And Moyes' first Champions League game coming up, and first Manchester derby. Doesn't get much bigger than all of this, does it?
No, absolutely not. It's huge, and it's really, you mentioned ennui, and I'm putting that to one side and just enjoying the newness, the novelty of all this strange new dad nonsense that's going on. I guess we have to make some sort of predictions, which is obviously even harder than it's ever been. Not that we were ever any good at it. We got 2 games to predict, and I think they're both very, very hard ones to call. But I'm going to let you go first on that basis.
Okay, so I think United will be solid enough and just about beat Bayer Leverkusen. So I'm going to go for a 3-1 victory for United. And in the derby,
okay,
I'm going to say United will keep it super, super, super tight, and it's going to be 0-0.
Okay, I think that I'm going to go for slightly less emphatic, maybe 2-1 win against Bayer, and I think I'm going to go for a 1-0 win in the derby. I think we're going to nick it. Ridiculously optimistic, but why not? These are the days of our lives, and we might as well enjoy them.
Certainly enjoy them more if we get 2 victories out in the next week or so. So I guess that brings us just about to the close of this week's show. Out early this week on account of various travelling locally and around the world.
Yeah, you want to guess which of us is going locally and which one of us is going around the world, listeners? I'll give you a hint. It's exactly the ones that you would expect to be going around the world that are.
So Paul's off to the Cape Verde Islands.
Yes. Only one of us has ever met Eric Cantona in a Rio de Janeiro jazz club, and it's not me.
There you go. Yeah, it's just the kind of people I like to hang out with, you know. It's when you're a celebrity podcaster, you know. Eric goes around saying, do you know where Ed hangs out? I don't think he does. So I will not be watching the United game on Tuesday because I will be on a plane, unfortunately. But I'm sure I'll get the result as soon as I land, and I most certainly will be watching the derby, and I will be on Mother Earth somewhere, planet, and I'm really hoping for a couple of really positive results. You know, it's got some momentum now. The Palace game was just good enough, and, you know, build on that, and now I'm hoping for a good few days ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. And come on, you Reds, we'll be back at our normal end of the week release schedule the week after the derby, all being well.
See you then.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip. When it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Arr, fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.